China Undercover welcomes you to a deep dive bulletin that ties together what may at first look like scattered headlines. The uneasy calm that settled over China when the government formally declared victory against COVID-19 late in 2023 has shattered in a matter of weeks. Official media still retail the story that the country is returning to normal life. Yet hospitals are overflowing, social feeds are jam-packed with desperate self-help tips, and a brand new visa freeze in Washington threatens to strand hundreds of thousands of mainland students abroad. The two crises, one viral, one political, seem to share no tissue, but together they expose a single uncomfortable truth. The easy back-and-forth era when Chinese citizens could hop on a plane, earn a degree in the United States, and bring home global know-how is over. What follows is a panoramic, detail-heavy tour of the situation, stitched together so viewers who may have caught only fragments online can see the full mosaic. On the night of 18 May, Dru Sun Ziyong, Associate Chief Surgeon of Orthopedic Trauma at Beijing's Wangjing Hospital, uploaded a 68-second Douyin video that ricocheted around Chinese social media before censors clipped it. In the clip, Sun doesn't raise his voice or perform a theatrical mask demonstration. He simply scrolls through raw admissions data on his phone while explaining that two-digit percentages of walk-in trauma patients are now arriving with coincidental COVID symptoms. He names the culprit XTV1, a recombinant descendant of BA2 and JN1 that raced through pockets of southeast China in early April and is now everywhere, from Yaonin to Yunnan. And the multiplier is stunning, Sun says. Within 48 hours of symptom onset, average viral load doubles or even triples the peaks we saw with BF7 last winter. The most frightening twist, he warns, is silent hypoxia. Roughly 1 in 10 adult cases at his hospital show oxygen saturation plunging below 90% with barely a hint of chest tightness. By the time someone feels short of breath, he explains, CT scans often look like snowstorms. Sun's clip triggers a rush of corroboration. A pediatrician in Guangzhou posts a selfie holding her own positive antigen test. COVID never left, she writes. It simply learned to speak through a mask. A cardiologist in Wuhan replies that his ward is quietly repurposing half of its beds for respiratory overflow. Screenshots tumble in, closed-door notices at primary schools in Shenzhen and Taizhou, WeChat parent groups debating whether to send children to grandma's countryside home, grainy images of triage tents beside county clinics in Shanxi. None of this is visible on CCTV's evening news, which continues to open with footage of tourists strolling beneath paper lanterns to prove the economy is humming. The official China CDC weekly bulletin, released 10 May, does admit that outpatient surveillance of influenza-like illness hit 16.2% positivity for SARS-CoV-2, more than double early April's 7.5%, and that COVID has ranked first for 3 straight weeks among respiratory pathogens. But the bulletin leaves out the denominator. How many infections is 16.2% of total ILI visits? The document does not say. Percentages without counts mislead, argues U.S. Lin Xiaoho, the retired U.S. Army virologist who spent much of the pandemic workshopping cross-national data on an online talk show called Elite Forum. He points out that China's CDC is reporting positivity among those already sick enough to seek testing, not a random slice of the population. If you raise or lower the testing gate, he notes, the denominator shifts at will. Another Elite Forum guest, independent producer Li Jun, frames it in moral rather than mathematical language. Beijing oscillates between iron bar lockdowns that pretend zero infections and a tourism boost narrative that pretends zero deaths, he says. For ordinary Chinese, the pandemic is both natural disaster and man-made calamity, two punches thrown by the same fist. Scroll any health-related hashtag on Xiaohongshu before moderators catch up, and you meet long lines of story bubbles that diverge sharply from the official calm. All 12 in my extended family infected. Grandma needed an ICU bed. The hospital offered a corridor chair instead. Third bout since 2023. This time my oxygen dipped to 88. Pulse oximeters sold out citywide in Jiangmen. Salary 4,500 yuan, CT bills 3,600. The math is negative. Qingdao funeral parlors call daily to schedule slots. I have never heard so many sirens at night. Some posts vanish within minutes, but screenshots proliferate faster than they can be erased. They reveal a pattern. Most symptomatic clusters involve whole families rather than isolated individuals, implying household transmission remains the dominant route despite widespread claims that COVID is a cold now. Several users complain the local fever clinic diagnosed them with influenza A, but prescribed the same Paxlovid that was hard to find during the December 2022 surge. Doctors themselves appear trapped between Hippocratic duty and political optics. One general practitioner in Zhengzhou confides in a private chat that she must list Mycoplasma pneumonia on discharge paperwork even when PCR confirms SARS-CoV-2. We lose credibility either way, she laments, with our patients for downplaying and with authorities if we don't. To gauge outbreak magnitude, outside analysts are forced to triangulate. Baidu search term spikes for loss of taste, energy consumption dips in manufacturing hubs, or obituaries on local government websites. The Hong Kong-based non-profit Airfinity estimates the mainland death toll between March and May could exceed 60,000, but uncertainty bands are wide because municipalities no longer publish cremation statistics, a data series discreetly halted in mid-2023. Why the hush? Beijing's public health messaging changed when Zero COVID died in December 2022. The new line is economic recovery, and persistent waves undercut that narrative. Authorities thus fall back on a centripetal rule of thumb, dilute each flare into a flu wave, highlight the mild cases, lowball the severe. The side effect is that citizens abandon official data entirely and rely on rumor, which only fuels panic buying of antivirals and oxygen concentrators, two items now commanding markups of 400% on Taobao. While XTB1 hunts for lungs, the United States has launched a clampdown of an entirely different genome, visas. On 27 May, an internal State Department cable reached U.S. embassies worldwide, instructing consular sections to pause new F1 and J1 appointment slots for Chinese citizens until enhanced screening protocols are fully deployed. The next day, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, serving in a second Trump term, tweeted the gist publicly. Washington will revoke or refuse visas for mainland and Hong Kong students with direct ties to the Chinese Communist Party, or, more provocatively, those enrolled in critical disciplines such as artificial intelligence, quantum computing, semiconductor design, and advanced biotechnology. There is no inherent right to a U.S. student visa, Rubio wrote. National security comes first. A senior official told Axios that the order is not theoretical. We are preparing mass cancellations. The number most often cited is 277,000, the total mainland student population in the U.S. last academic year, according to the Institute of International Education's Open Doors report. The immediate fallout played out in real time on Chinese social platforms. The booking interface for U.S. visa slots resembles an airline seat map, green blocks for open dates, gray for sold out. Within hours of the cable, every green block in Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, and Shenyang turned gray. Students hammered refresh until 3 a.m., servers buckled and threw 502 errors. Rumors raged that some applicants saw their confirmed appointments retroactively canceled. Wu Yuan, a 29-year-old molecular biology admit to the University of Minnesota Duluth, recounts how she reloaded the Shanghai consulate page 127 times before it crashed for good. I already deferred last fall when they changed the English language test rule, she says. If the visa dies, the offer dies, my scholarship dies, everything. A Beijing high school senior heading for Ohio State's communications program writes on Xiaohongshu. 1 month ago, my biggest worry was freshman roommate drama. Now, I might not set foot on campus at all. The new anxieties fall into two buckets. Those still in China cannot book interviews to obtain the initial F1. Those already in the U.S. fear mid-program revocation or opt for less H-1B rejection after graduation. In both camps, the phrase, "the good days are gone," circulates like a mantra. Some advisors tell students to pivot to Canada or Australia. Others suggest gap years in Singapore's polytechnic system to ride out the storm. Just when panic seems maxed out, the Department of Homeland Security drops a bomb. On 22 May 2025, Secretary Kristi Noem revokes Harvard University's Student and Exchange Visitor Program (SEVP) certification, effectively banning the school from issuing I-20 forms to new foreign students. DHS cites a failure to safeguard campus safety, a refusal to police rising anti-Semitic intimidation, and acceptance of opaque foreign funding, especially from the PR. Harvard's own data shows some 6,800 international students, about 27% of enrollment, nearly a fifth from China. All must now scramble for transfer letters or face removal. The decision is remarkable. Harvard is neither a small ESL mill nor a sketchy coding boot camp. By hitting the Ivy League's crown jewel, Washington signals that prestige no longer shields an institution if security flags fly high enough. University presidents nationwide hold emergency calls with immigration lawyers. Students wonder aloud which campus will be next. The Biden-Trump transition in 2024 cemented a bipartisan consensus. The era of engagement first, risk later is finished. 3 threads tighten the knot. FBI data show a steady trickle of espionage cases. 2020, PLA Lieutenant Yenqing Chen at Boston University charged over visa fraud and document theft. 2024, October 3rd for Michigan students indicted for photographing a missile testing site. 2024, Dang Hua, overstaying F1, arrested for shipping military parts to North Korea. Technology supremacy. U.S. export controls on GPUs and lithography gear choke Beijing's AI dreams. Policymakers feared Chinese grad students are Beijing's backdoor. Political climate. Midwest swing states that lost factories to China cheer any measure that shrinks the talent pipeline feeding the competitor. Rubio's team notes that international students pumped $50 billion 0 cents into the U.S. economy in 2023, half from China and India, yet the new doctrine is clear. Dollars matter less than defense. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ma Ning calls the policy ideological McCarthyism. State tabloid Global Times publishes op-eds accusing Washington of decoupling minds, while Weibo hashtags urge returnees to build the motherland's own elite universities. Yet private consultancy Zhejian says domestic job postings for PhD AI researchers fell 42% year-on-year due to funding cuts. Without U.S. postgraduate funnels, supply will tighten further. Back-channel chatter inside Chinese academic circles warns that homegrown PhD cohorts cannot fill the gap in semiconductor design or cryptography quickly enough, especially with U.S. chip sanctions already biting. The paradox. Washington fears tech theft, Beijing fears tech stagnation, and the student body lies at the fault line. On paper, a viral wave and a visa ban are unrelated. In practice, they converge on Chinese youth's sense of predictability. For students in Guangdong locked out of class by XTV1, SAT or TOEFL dates might be missed. For undergraduates already in Boston or Los Angeles, rising anti-China rhetoric plus the risk of sudden status loss create psychological whiplash. Stay or go. Speak or stay silent. There is a darker feedback loop. If China's outbreak worsens, consular staff may cite health grounds to sustain the freeze. If the visa wall stands, elite mainland families may skip U.S. schools and crowd high-end domestic hospitals, draining resources needed for the variant fight. If XTV1 plateaus by July and Beijing cooperates with WHO variant sequencing, Washington could frame limited student flows as a goodwill gesture before the U.S. midterms. A sharper wave collides with headline-grabbing espionage arrest, say, a CRISPR data theft. The U.S. tightens again, universities lose revenue, and Chinese policy hawks double down on internal circulation, cutting foreign-funded labs, an even deeper decoupling spiral. Both capitals quietly carve out humanitarian exemptions. Medical SA tracks joint virology surveillance. Everything else, AI, semiconductors, quantum, remains sealed off. For now, Beijing censors continue batting away posts that mention overloaded crematoria, while U.S. consulates cut interview desks from 10 windows to 2. There is no quick patch, no single press release that ends the crossfire, but the shifting ground is unmistakable. Students and viruses alike once slipped across borders with shocking speed. In 2025, both face walls. One built of antibodies, the other stamped denied Li Beijing. Software engineering senior at UCLA monitors Congress on C-SPAN between coding interviews. My OPT paperwork is in limbo. If I get kicked out, I have to redo Chinese military service exemptions. Zhang Yang, ICU nurse in Chengdu, volunteers for triple overtime. Not everyone on the chart dies from silent hypoxia, but the ones who do haunt you. I dream I forget to turn on the ventilator. Professor Paul Atkins, chair of electrical engineering at a Midwestern land-grant university, says 6 mainland admits lost visa slots, forcing him to cancel a DARPA-funded robotics project. Decoupling isn't theoretical, he sighs. It lives in my lab timetable. Their lives intersect in ways no policy brief can fully map. A respiratory ward in Sichuan under fluorescent glare, a visa portal timing out at 3 a.m. Shanghai time, a Pentagon procurement schedule waiting on grad student patents. The common denominator is uncertainty. About health, about borders, about whether the world's 2 largest economies can share classrooms and air without poisoning either. For Chinese families and U.S. institutions alike, one era has closed and another, messier, more suspicious but perhaps more transparent, has begun. Stay with China Undercover as we keep threading these storylines, because the next chapter will likely arrive sooner than the next embassy appointment slot. Fuzhou, metropolis of 8 million souls, is morphing into a wasteland, its boulevards echoing like empty canyons. Across the Pacific, the CDC flags a brand new COVID strain, traced straight back to China. Guangdong scrambles, classroom lights go dark as infection curves climb. And the town that routinely freezes at 48 DGC, today it's China's sizzling hotspot, dominating every trending board. Meanwhile, the once untouchable Gaokao registers its first dip in 8 years, stirring a storm of rumors. Where have Chinese freshmen gone? Quit hunting for the white-haired sage, whispers the feed. The chosen has arrived. A seasoned master decodes the cryptic 2A Bay 2, while the U.S. State Department sharpens its shears, ready to snip Chinese student visas. Strap in for tonight's ride and plunge into decoding China, your fast lane to everything beneath the surface. Fulho again. Skyscrapers stand, yet life has leaked away. I've clocked 7, maybe 8 years here, and truth be told, we've sailed into an ocean of national debt. People can't buy homes, can't marry, can't raise kids, many can't even afford a fever. Social media pushes pastel fantasies, but over 90% of residents have watched their savings evaporate. Dating now starts with a price tag. Some women insist on tens of thousands of yuan in the bank before agreeing to coffee. Open your eyes. Saturday on Yanyo Road, nobody. My storefront, once 25,000 JPY a month, hasn't seen a paying footstep. 3, 4 neighbors have already bolted. Half a year on, their shutters still clang in the wind. Even Yonghui Supermarket has pulled the plug. Tell me, can brick and mortar survive 2025? Fuzhou, pearl of the Taiwan Strait, used to anchor the maritime Silk Road, a crown jewel in the Belt and Road tiara. Now, as China's GDP engine coughs, the city feels like a festering wound along the coast. Today's episode cuts into that infection. Closed. Closed. Empty. The apartment block I'm filming from? No A/C hume, 0 tenants, just stale air. The factory behind me? Idled. A buddy opened a convenience market for shift workers last year. Factory shutdowns have bled his shelves dry. Everyone's hurting. Doing business in 2025 is like sprinting through quicksand. Glance at this subway stop. Once a hive, now 9 of 10 kiosks padlocked. I remember when the landlord leased one unit for a 10,000 JPY noodle shop. The space sits hollow, struggling to fetch 2,000 JPY, burning a 2 million yuan crater in his pocket. For rent has faded to gray. Even second-hand car lots, once gold mines, are collapsing domino style. Yesterday's hot commodity meets today's cold silence. What's wrong with Fuzhou 2025? Netizens ask. Once teeming malls now display vacant glass and sun-bleached Spring Festival scrolls. Foot traffic around lines 1 and 2 of the metro has vanished, though Xie and Shanjia hospitals stand steps away. Families in Fuzhou huddle indoors, refreshing news feeds that ping out alarms faster than they can process them. That once-in-a-lifetime apartment they bought on the 24th floor? The elevator now runs on a rationed schedule to slash utility bills. Neighbors climb 20-plus flights just to save a few kilowatts. Grocery apps flash delivery unavailable after 9 p.m. because too many riders quit. Fuel costs more than the tips they might earn. Even livestream sellers, the last-ditch lifeline for many merchants, complain that views have cratered by 70%. No traffic, no sales, no tomorrow, one host mutters, before cutting the stream. Meanwhile, banks tighten their purse strings. Overnight, credit cards drop from a 30,000 yuan limit to 5,000 yuan. Customers queue outside ATMs at dawn, afraid the machines will blink out of cash by noon. Whispers spread of hidden non-performing loan lists, small garment workshops, LED bulb plants, mom-and-pop cafes, each name on the roll a muddied tombstone of someone's dream. Local officials promised stimulus, but the last subsidy round, 2,000 yuan shopping vouchers, barely covered a week of vegetables and rice. Outside Fuzhou, the ripple turns into a riptide. In nearby Ningde, a lithium battery giant, once a proud pillar of the EV boom, announces an extended maintenance break, half the workforce furloughed indefinitely. Buses run half empty. The station loudspeaker echoes off metal benches as if mocking passengers who never arrive. Up the coast, shipping containers stack 5, 6, 7 high at the port. Their export orders canceled. Train operators count hours at home, praying the phone will buzz with a shift call that never comes. As the economic pulse weakens, fear curdles into anger. On Fuzhou's waterfront promenade, residents gather at dusk, faces masked, not by mandate but by anxiety. A grandma waves a utility bill that jumped 40% in a single cycle. A young man holds a cardboard sign, rent, wages. Is that too much to ask? Police vans idle a block away, lights off, ready to disperse, but the crowd just mutters, weary rather than rebellious, like patients in a clinic who know the diagnosis yet can't afford the cure. Overseas headlines harden. The U.S. Senate schedules hearings on economic shockwaves from China's slowdown. Investors eye de-risking routes, and the visa review expands. STEM students from problem provinces may see applications frozen pending security checks. In Australia, 2 charter flights packed with hospitality staff return half empty. The promised workers from Fujian never made it to the airport. Rumor says their agencies collapsed under debt. And still the virus races ahead. By early June, that new Omicron cousin, NB 1.811, appears on wastewater alerts in Toronto and São Paulo. Epidemiologists urge booster campaigns. Markets tremble at déjà vu supply chain nightmares. In Fuzhou's deserted malls, janitors spray disinfectant into air that already feels sterile from lack of life. An LED billboard flickers above them, looping a real estate ad recorded years ago. Laughing couples push strollers through sunlit plazas that no longer exist outside the screen. Somewhere in those towers, a toddler presses a nose to window glass, watching the city lights blink off section by section, rolling blackouts to balance grid load. Down on the street, a delivery rider guns his e-bike through the gloom, carrying a single lukewarm noodle box worth 8 yuan. He mutters the joke du jour. 8 yuan is better than 0. 0 is better than debt. And debt is all we breathe now. In Fuzhou 2025, even the jokes come pre-mortgaged. Hospitals from Hong Kong to Heilongjiang read out the same bleak vitals. ER beds jammed, ventilators humming, doctors counting shift minutes like poker chips. The CDC insists domestic numbers stay low. But the new substrain is a greyhound, leaner, quicker, always 2 strides ahead. In Hong Kong alone, 81 critical cases and 30 deaths, mostly over 65, accumulated in 4 short weeks. On the mainland, emergency visits have leapt from 7% to 16%. Inpatient wards now run north of 6%. Dr. Amy Edwards at Case Western calls it a quiet brushfire racing across Asia, while Prof. Sash Varma verifies, the flame spreads faster than anything on record. Travel logs paint a spiderweb, infected flyers routed through China, Japan, Korea, Thailand, France, Spain, Vietnam, Taiwan. Symptoms feel old hat, cough, fever, sore throat, yet the velocity disturbs even hardened epidemiologists. The same morning the CDC downgrades COVID shots for healthy kids and pregnant women. Analysts mutter, "Have we just dimmed the flashlight?" as the corridor twists again.